Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything that I talk about. Be aware this is your first and only warning that many spoilers lie ahead. Right now, we're going to look just at a few comics that released on November 14th, 2023. As I record this, I'm getting ready to try and take a little bit of extra time off with family during the Thanksgiving holiday. That means trying to fit an entire week's worth of work into 2 days. So I'm cutting corners in various places, unfortunately. And that means that I'm only going to talk about 3 comics very briefly this time, when in fact I read at least a half dozen. There was a lot of stuff that I read this week. But if there is something that I don't talk about, and this goes for any week, that I don't talk about that you want to ask if I happen to have read, sometimes that is the case. So please leave me a comment or something, or get in touch with me some other way and ask me. I love just chatting it up about DC Comics if there's something you wanted in particular to bring up. So anyway, so first up, Jay Garrick, The Flash, number 1. This series I'm really enjoying so far, written by Jeremy Adams, who did a run on The Flash, and is bringing, I think, some of that same family vibe, family sensibilities that he seems to write really well into this story, which is about rediscovering that Jay Garrick and his wife, whose name escapes me at the moment, have a long lost daughter named Judy, who, because of like this weird supervillain thing, was taken out of time, and they forgot that she existed, and so like they're retconning in her existence, and suddenly the Garricks are remembering, oh my gosh, we have this daughter we completely forgot about. And in this issue, was it number 1 or is it number 2? I think there's only been this one issue right now. Yeah. We see in this story how it actually happened that she was forgotten, and it introduces this villain named Dr. Elemental, which just sounds like a really perfectly cheesy old school villain name. Love it. And I am looking forward to getting introduced to him more. And I like this kind of speedster out of time kind of thing. I mean, already with the characters being de-aged from the golden age, the ones that are still around, they're all, in order to be around today, since they would all be in their 90s, some of them like into their early hundreds, those that have survived that original generation, there's some explanation for each of them surviving in some way. Wildcat has 9 lives, and Alan Scott is not even quite human anymore, and Jay Garrick, the Speed Force, has kind of kept him and I think his wife young-ish, or more younger than they would normally be. And so but they are kind of these relics from this older time period, this older age, and Judy even more so. They show kind of the potential for her to be kind of a woman or a girl out of time, and I hope that they play that up in the same way that some Captain America stories have done, in really charming and inventive ways. I think also the potential here to play with the dynamic of an older couple having a child. That's something that, already it's rare that you have parents and children as characters in an ongoing comic book in DC Comics. But to specifically play with the idea of parents that are on the older side of things, that are even senior citizens, raising a teenage daughter now, I think there's just some interesting dynamics there. Some families just get started later for whatever reason, sometimes because of adoption. Families or parents that are older than is typical will have a younger child in their home. And so I just think there's potential to do some really interesting things with this dynamic. And we've never seen Jay Garrick this way before. The Flash family has been kind of like a found family for him, and that's even commented on in this issue. But now suddenly their biological daughter returns. They remember that she exists. She feels a little bit replaced by what has come, and they've lost all this time. I don't think in this issue they're quite giving the weight to that that I would necessarily want them to, but at the same time, if you give full weight to that, then oh my gosh, there's so much in comics that if you give full weight to psychologically, people would just be shattered. It would be a very dark, dark place. So it's not that I necessarily want them to give full weight to these things as they would be impactful psychologically in the real world, but maybe a little more weight would be good. But still, this story is moving fast. We're giving a crash course to Judy and her reintroduction. I'm definitely on board to see where this story goes. Next up is Superman number 7, and in this issue, Perry White is running for mayor. I'm not sure how I feel about that. In fact, I kind of think I don't like it. I like him to be a hardened newsman who is delivering the stories about how things are, instead of trying to change the way things are, which is what a mayor is going to be about doing. And so I'm kind of curious, I guess, to see where that's going to go, but I would rather they just get him back into the status quo and freshen up that aspect of, what makes him tick as an editor for the Daily Planet and stuff, get into some interesting character-oriented stuff in that way. But, we'll see. Maybe this change in his status quo will eventually get him back to being the editor at the Planet. I mean, I think that's almost a foregone conclusion. But, maybe when that happens, we'll have the kind of Perry reinvigoration that I would really like to see now instead of him, running for mayor. So we've got a couple other interesting things going on in this. Lex Luthor, in a conversation with Lois Lane, is really trying to convince her, and she's totally not buying it, that, believe it or not, Superman has actually changed him as a person for the better, and he really is not bent on his old evil ways. Now, I think as readers, we understand, okay, well, Lex is always going to be a villain of some kind. But I am willing to believe, based on his exchange with Lois, that maybe he's going to be a more complex villain going forward. And I really like the possibility of that in Lex Luthor. And I think the more you lean into his shared childhood with Clark Kent, which they've started doing again as of this run of Superman, I think there is more potential for him to be a more complex villain as a former childhood friend of Clark Kent. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think the standout kind of moment for me, philosophically speaking, in the comics I read this week was in Superman number 7. There's an escaped prisoner in chains, very powerful, that they just discovered in the last issue. We know almost nothing about him except he's immensely powerful, and he really has it in for Lex Luthor and is just out to get him. But first he's going to destroy Metropolis because he knows Lex Luthor cares about Metropolis, Well, Perry White recognizes this guy and says under his breath, Sammy Stryker. That's an interesting name to hear. I don't know who the Sammy part, not so much, but Stryker, spelled the same way as the metahuman island prison off the coast of Metropolis, makes me wonder. And this guy also flying out of the depths of Metropolis, covered in chains and stuff. That's part of his quote unquote supervillain look, it looks like. And so I'm like, okay, so it's a really powerful guy, covered in chains, last name Stryker. So he seems to definitely have ties to that island, that penitentiary in some way. Makes me very interested in seeing what's going to come of him and what he will be in Superman's life in the future. But he says something interesting to me that I think could easily go in one ear and out the other for many readers, but is worth us examining and then using as a springboard for self-examination. Superman tries to reason with him, saying, hey, I want to help you. I'm not here to get into a big fight with you. I want to help you out. And Sammy Stryker says, help me. Your symbol, and he refers to the symbol on his chest. It's the same symbol that it's on the same building that Luthor built, because Luthor, there's this whole story with Luthor changing his corporation's name to Supercorp or something and handing it over to Superman while Lex Luthor is in prison. So that's a whole other thing. But anyway, he's using Superman's branding on his building right now and on his company. So this villain says, it's on the same building that Luthor built, and anyone connected to Lex Luthor is no one's friend. And of course, as readers, we look at this and say, yeah, this guy's being totally unreasonable, And it's easy for us to say that. But hold on for a second. How easy is it for us to enter into a cancel culture mentality where we see someone associating with certain things and we just have this knee-jerk reaction to say they are bad. And we put them all the way on this extreme side and just associate them with the worst polarized version of themselves and whatever they're associated with that we possibly could, So I don't think, I mean, this is kind of a cliche kind of moment in comics for there to be this crazy misunderstanding and these extreme assumptions being made. I mean, this kind of misunderstanding in comic books is often used to pit heroes against heroes, just to give them an excuse to duke it out. But so this idea of settling into an extreme and it causing conflict is decades old in comic books, but for some reason it struck me in a fresh way, and I'm like, we as readers look at this, we are supposed to say, obviously, this is ridiculous that he would come to this conclusion, that he wouldn't seek to understand where Superman is coming from, why Superman is associating in any way with Lex Luthor, asking those questions. But how often do we fail to ask those questions, especially in the discourse online? And so, intended or not, this just strikes me as an indictment against cancel culture that we as Christians, just as easily as anybody else, can get swept up in. So it's just worth a moment of pause and reflection, I think, that Superman number 7 gives us here, if we're willing to receive it that way. And then finally, Wonder Woman number 2. I'm continuing to like what Tom King is writing here. There's been this incident where an Amazon is accused of having killed an entire bar full of men only, and as a result, the Amazons are being deported en masse from the United States because of a government edict for them to just, okay, you're out until we figure out what's going on, until justice is brought to this Amazon who did this. And so that creates this major conflict between Wonder Woman and the United States government. And in this issue, we've got a standoff between her and the U.S. military, and the front man for the military, of course, for dramatic purposes, is Steve Trevor, her former longtime love and, on again, off again romance and stuff. And but I would actually, I love that they're doing this for the sake of tension, and to take this big, massive scale conflict and bringing it down to this very personal level where Wonder Woman is representing the Amazon, Steve Trevor is representing the U.S. government, but I think it's just been a long time since. And I've followed Wonder Woman on and off, especially when a new creative team takes over. And I think I need a refresher course on their romance of the ages. I've seen stories of them just getting to know each other in retellings of her origin and early years. And I've seen more recent stories where they've been on the outs for a while. But I don't recall, I don't think I've read a story, maybe ever, of their heyday as a romantic couple. I just kind of keep hearing about it. And so, I kind of hope they take the opportunity pretty soon here to maybe restore that and remind me of why I should be sad when they're in conflict like this. But anyway, this issue features a flashback to Wonder Woman's test on Paradise Island, or Themyscira, to be able to have the right to represent the Amazons to man's world. So that's kind of a pivotal part of her origin story that's kind of being retraced here in flashbacks. Also, there's kind of an internal monologue that is not necessarily her. I think we actually eventually realize, this is supposed to be... There's references to a daughter of Wonder Woman's that I don't think we've met yet, which I was very intrigued by. But anyway, these reflective kind of monologues going on talk about Wonder Woman in the different way that she's perceived. Is she a representative of the Amazons? Is she a champion for peace? Or is she a fierce warrior? They kind of go through the different ways that Wonder Woman has been written and interpreted and seen over the years. And I feel like that's the writer's way of saying, okay, there's all these different ways that Wonder Woman's been written in the past, seen in the past, but who is she really? And by asking that question, I think they're saying to us, in addition to this being, the issue number 2 of a fresh start for Wonder Woman, I think they're saying in a number of ways here, this is a jumping on point for an introduction to Wonder Woman. That's what the Dawn of DC initiative is meant to have been, but it's not until recently that some of these Dawn of DC branded comic book series have really, I felt like, been making good on this idea and being the reintroductions to some of these characters. And it looks to me like this iteration of Wonder Woman is aiming to be a reintroduction of the character, and it's one that I am liking a lot so far. As I said last time, I like Wonder Woman to be a fish out of water, where she is wearing her Greco-Roman inspired garb in a very modern world. I get less interested when she's wearing that garb and then in a ancient world fighting ancient mythological creatures and stuff like, I don't really want all the trappings and just that to be the whole book. I kind of want her juxtaposed against a modern backdrop, against sci-fi stuff or other types of environments. And it seems like they're going to be playing that up maybe a little bit, because Steve Trevor kind of talks about the fact that he's seen her, fighting off against whatever in all the seven hells of Greek absurdity, And so I feel like he's kind of representing the reader there, like, your world is so bonkers, but here we are in my world. And that is kind of the friction that I want to see in a Wonder Woman book, is her standing absurdly, in contrast to a modern world, and for her to be up against the modern U.S. military is just a perfect picture of that. So, very, very pleased with what's going on in Wonder Woman right now. And I think those are all my thoughts on comic books for now, short as they were comparatively to what they could have been. Which of these books has your attention? I would love to get your thoughts or hear about the books that I didn't mention that have come out recently that are on your mind. Love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Remember to check out christiangeekcentral.com as always for tons more content. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.